Hi,
Hello,
how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I was just about to email you. Oh gosh. Um, Great. Are you going to be using you want a screen share or anything like that?
No, I have a camera that I'll use, but no, I'm not going to screen share or anything.
Okay. Sounds good. So I am very grateful to you for doing this, and I know we went through a couple of schedule changes and everything is kind of crazy at the end of the year. Are you still teaching?
I'm in a private school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in public school for 20 years, and then 9 years ago I left. And um, for a while before COVID, I was traveling and teaching a lot around the country. And then I ended up managing a local art center. I've been doing that for about 8.5 years now. And so it's part-time, so I get to manage, and then since I'm the one that schedules all the classes, I can teach classes that I want. And like I have summer camps
Oh,
next.
that sounds so cool.
Yeah. Um, and then 3 years ago, I got kind of fell into a very small private school.
Mhm.
Um, and then this year we've had a little bit of turmoil. They actually several about a year before I started, the founder of the school sold it to this big corporation, and at the beginning of May, we were told like, "Oh yeah, we're going to close the school at the end of this school year,"
Oh
and
my God.
yeah, we had like a month, and so it was just like everyone was in shock. And then like they notified the parents, and then the parents were like, "Well, no, we don't want to see the school close."
Hmm.
And so a group of parents kind of banded together, and they actually were able to get a nonprofit going and actually keep their. I mean, it looks like the school's going to continue. The biggest thing is that the space that we're in is just too big. Our enrollment has just dropped. That's one of the reasons why the corporation decided they wanted to basically close the school because they were losing money with it. And
Uh-huh.
so the space is too big. So the last the last few days have been basically packing up an entire school so that it can be moved at some point when they find a new location. They haven't found a
Right.
new location yet. So we all got offer letters, but the problem was that a lot of people, myself included, started like putting in applications and having interviews. And so a couple people were like, look, we didn't get our offer letters until like at the end of last week. And
Wow, that's late.
yeah, and that was our last day of school. Like last Friday was our last day of school.
Ugh.
And so this week, um, people have just been basically cleaning up and packing and stuff. And um, uh, so I mean, I've applied for public school, several positions, but haven't even gotten an interview. And I'm like, the latest one was a high school, um, and it was like didn't even get an interview for it. And I'm like, okay, I taught 20 years in public school. I have all this experience, and I'm like, I don't even like get an interview for this. I'm like, I can't believe that. So,
The whole industry right now is so crazy and backwards, and nobody knows what's really going to happen because of the person in charge of this country.
uh,
Where are you located?
I'm in Northern Virginia,
Okay.
just right outside of Washington, D.C.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to let people in.
Okay.
Normally what I do is give, dribblers about 5 minutes grace period. I will say my welcome and then hand it over to you.
Okay.
We have like an hour and a half to work together, and at about 8:15, hopefully, I'll remember, or my partner who's going to join us. We need to let everybody know about the Google form for their CTLE credits, or PD hours or whatnot. They have to fill it out in order to get the credit. Um, And that's pretty much it. So
Okay.
you can when I introduce you, you can introduce yourself, tell your background. I think I mentioned that I attended one of your workshops at an NAEA conference. I think it was either Boston or Manhattan years ago, and it was so much fun. It was like chaos, fun chaos in this giant room, and everybody's running around with cardboard and tape and yeah.
That was probably well, Dave did. I wasn't at Boston. My buddy Dave
Hmm.
did Boston, and then after COVID we did New York.
Okay. But I know you were involved
Yeah.
somehow. I just don't remember
It,
when
it
or
could it could have
where.
been the New York one because I helped him out.
Might have been, might have been. Okay, so I'm letting everybody in. I'll say, like I said, I'll say hello and I'll introduce you, and then you can tell everybody your background and go from there and do
Sounds
your
good.
whatever your magic collage lesson. I'm fascinated by how you do these every single day, and they're all different. Um, try to let's see. Hi everybody. Welcome. I am sitting here chatting with Eric Scott, who I have been watching over the last year as his mini collage collection has grown and taken over hallways and things like that. So I thought, let's have him come and play with us. Hi, everyone. I'm sure everybody's either finished with school or exhausted and dragging yourself by your fingernails to the finish line like me. Um, but this is fun. This is going to be a fun one. And thank you so much, Eric, for joining us tonight and giving us your time. I know you're a pretty busy guy. Um, hey, Kristen. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Mom. Uh, hi, Jenna. Marilyn, look who's here. Hi. And hello, everybody else. Good to see you. Good to see you. I keep saying every time we're on, I say this is our romper room moment in the magic mirror and saying hello. Um, okay, so it is 7:03. Maybe I'll give people a couple more minutes. I'm going to spotlight you, Eric, so everybody can see your handsome face. There you go. Okay. So as I said, Eric is an educator that I've been following on social media for a couple of years, and I actually was just mentioning to him that I attended one of his co-workshops at an NAEA conference years ago, which was tons of fun. Getting everybody to get out of their comfort zone and run around a room and play with cardboard and tape and limited materials. It was an interesting event. And limitation seems to be your theme because you are now doing that with your collages.
Mhm.
And I'd like to hear about the evolution of this entire project that you're working on. So, without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Mr.
All
Eric
right.
Scott.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. So for those of you that don't know, I actually see a couple familiar names and faces. So, but for those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Eric Scott. I've been teaching. I just finished my 29th year. 20 of those years were in public school. Started out in Baltimore City and then moved to Northern Virginia, where I still live. I taught in Loudoun County, Virginia for 18 years, and then I ran away from public school. Um, Actually, it was just really I was decided to like pursue some things outside of public school. I'm also known for my visual journal. So my friend David and I are the journal fodder junkies, and we've written a couple books on journals. We have presented all over the place, including the National Art Ed Convention, and so kind of been doing that, and then. So for the last 9 years, I have been kind of doing my own thing, so traveling and teaching, and then COVID hit and all that kind of dried up. And for the last 3 years, I've been teaching at a small private school. It's a middle and high school. And this last year, I had, well, my last semester of this year, I had, in my high school class, I had four students. And in my middle school class, I had one student. So we were very, very small. But that's great because it's like, like basically one-on-one teaching and being able to sit down and work with the students. But through all of my educational career, I have been an artist. And growing up, I always loved to draw. And in middle school and high school, I was really into drawing portraits. Throughout college, my aim was like, oh, I just really wanted to get good at doing portraits, which I did. And then when I got teaching, and then when I moved to Loudoun County, I met my friend David, who introduced me to visual journals, and that kind of changed things. So instead of focusing on like very realistic portraits, I started experimenting and exploring lots of different things, color and shapes, and my work has just gotten more and more abstract over the years. And about 2.5 years ago now, I got into doing collage. And kind of the way that happened was I had a daily practice. For a year, I did painting. I did a watercolor painting every day, just real quick in a sketchbook. And then after a year, I was like, okay, I'm a little tired of doing painting. Let's try something else. So I was doing a daily doodle. And my reasoning was like anything could really be a doodle. So I could doodle with pen, pencil. If I wanted to do a blind contour, it's like really just was more encompassing than the daily paintings. And so, of course, one day I was like, oh, you could doodle with collage. And so I just sat down and I started, cutting out just some random paper I had. And then I did that. And I was like, oh, let me try some colored paper. And of course, I had some True Ray construction paper, and I was trying that. And then the only problem was that I wanted a huge array of color, and to have like light greens and dark greens and light blues and dark blues and all that stuff. And True Ray used to have that. I don't know if
Mhm.
anybody's noticed that True Ray construction paper now only has like 30 different colors. They used to have
Yeah.
like 50 different colors, and they've discontinued. So I was a little disappointed. However, I found that Michaels, and going over into their scrapbooking paper section, their cardstock, which you can kind of see over my shoulder here, has a huge array of colors. So I always get asked, like, oh, what kind of paper you use? I just go to Michael's and I get their Recollections cardstock from their scrapbooking section. Um, the only
I
problem
love that
is
paper.
the only problem is that it just doesn't come in big sizes. And I do have some Canson color line paper that I have in a big box back here. I've tried it, and it just doesn't have the range of color though that the Michael stuff does. But anyway, so I just started kind of doing the collages as my daily doodles, not having any plan on I'm just going to do collage from now on as far as like my daily practice. And then here we are almost 2.5 years later, and I've been doing a daily collage. So every day I sit down, usually in the morning. Now, being working in a small private school part-time, and being a part-time manager and an instructor at a small community art center, I have my mornings. And so I'm able to sit down most mornings and make a collage. And for 2 years, I did nothing but 6 by 8 inch paper. And so what I started to do is I started using the Strathmore mixed media paper. This is their 400 series paper, and I like it. I've used it for years with my mixed media work, but I've been using it now with collages because I just like the size. I could just buy this. This is 6 by 8, and I buy 12 of them at a time, and just did one every day. And then when I reached the 2 year mark, I decided like, well, I'm going to vary it. And so I've been doing lots of different sizes. Here recently, I've been doing a lot of 4 by 6 inch pieces. And sometimes they're kind of recognizable, representational, but most often they're very abstract and very just playing around with lots of lines and shapes. And I guess really kind of design really drives what I do. So anyway, that kind of is how I got into doing collages. And for me, I think what it was, the key part that hooked me was that it was a different way of thinking because I grew up drawing. And so like taking a pen or pencil was just like second nature to me. And like trying to figure out something and draw it, you think one way, but then trying to think about how to cut collage in a way and do things like you have to like there has to be a sequence. Like you have, oh, I have to glue this down first before I glue this on top. I don't know how many times I've glued stuff down and gone, oh, I should have glued this other thing down first. So yeah, it's just a different way of thinking. And I kind of adopted Matisse's way of working as far as like drawing with scissors. You may have heard that phrase whenever you've taught Matisse or read about Matisse, but that idea of drawing with scissors, like I I don't when I first started doing the daily collages, basically I was like, I'm gonna have paper, I'm gonna have scissors and a glue stick. I'm not going to use a pencil to draw anything. I'm not going to sketch it out first. I'm just going to sit down and spend 30 minutes to an hour making something. And sometimes I would only have 5 minutes. And it's like, how do you make a collage in 5 minutes? Well, it's pretty easy to do once you kind of figure out exactly how to do it. So, uh, yeah, so I've then kind of course, taken the collage into my teaching practice. So that's kind of where we're going to get going. And so some of you may, I don't know if anybody's taken any of my collage workshops. So I've done it. I did it at NAEA, not this year, but I did it last year. I did it at the Virginia Art Ed convention or conference a couple years ago. I've done lots of online workshops. I've done workshops for other organizations and things. So I don't know if anybody's done any of my workshops, but one of my favorite things to use is index cards. So basically, if you have small paper, I like small paper for a couple reasons. Number one, it's small. It's quick to do. So, it's like we don't have to have a lot of material. We don't have to spend a lot of time to fill up that space. The other reason that I like it is that it's not precious, especially something cheap and inexpensive like index cards. Because how many of you have studios full of supplies that you don't use because you are waiting for something special or they're too good because I hear some laughing and I'm like that too, like it's like, oh, check out this new paint, oh, I'm going to get that, and you get it and then you're like, oh, I just spent like $40 for a tube of paint, I don't want to waste it. And it's like the best art supplies are the ones that you actually use. If you're not using them, then they're not art supplies. They're studio decorations. So, first of all, give yourself permission to use the good stuff. But if you find that you have that kind of like, oh, I don't want to use the good stuff, use cheap, inexpensive stuff. That's why I think kids art supplies are the best. I mean, there's so much you can do with Crayola markers and crayons and such like that. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and then it allows you to it frees you up to be experimental. So anyway, so basically, I'm going to ask you to have several pieces of small paper. Hopefully, you've got that near you. So I would say at least have 5 pieces, and I'm a big proponent of working quickly. As Stephanie said, I'm a big proponent of limitations because there's a quote, and I can never remember it exactly because it's a long, kind of difficult quote, but it's by a psychologist, Rollo May. And he studied creativity, actually wrote a book about it. And he basically, I'm going to paraphrase, but he basically says that creativity arises out of our limitations. So it's our struggle with and against those things that limit us that allows us to be creative. That's where our creativity comes from. Um, I don't know about you all, but I grew up during a time I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and back then I feel like creativity was taken for granted and that people believed either you were creative or you weren't, and that there was no, you couldn't get creative, you couldn't learn creativity, you either had it or you didn't. And I always heard the definition when you ask somebody, well, what is creativity? Oh, creativity is thinking outside of the box, right? How many of you heard that? I bet a lot of you have heard that. I don't believe that. I believe creativity is thinking inside the box, but you have to build the box. And that's what the limitations are. And I remember whenever I was teaching in the public schools, teaching high school, the kids are so creative in trying to break the rules because the rules are limitations and they get creative. And I remember this was back whenever iPods first started becoming popular. This is before iPhones. This is before, smartphones and you could have music before music was streaming. Um, and kids had their iPods and, that bright white cord because that was before Bluetooth headphones and earbuds, but they would have that bright white cord and they would try to hide it. So I don't know how many times I'd see kids sitting like this the entire class, or actually like this, and like walking around and then like have their sleeves all the way up here. And because they ran their earphones like through the sleeve and so they could listen to it, or how many kids were back then trying to text and you're like, why are you staring at your crotch, like I know you're texting. um but they get creative trying to bend the rules, push the rules. So it's those limitations. So basically, I'm going to give you a limitation. I want you to grab three to five different colors of paper. Okay. So if you really want to give yourself a challenge, just grab three different colors. And like I said, I use this cardstock. I have solid colors, but you might have other papers. Maybe you have painted papers that you hand painted yourself. Maybe you have scrapbook papers that have patterns. It doesn't really matter. I like solid flat color, but use what you like. Some people will scrounge around. Oh, look, I got brown craft paper from my last order that I got, or I've got uh, the inside of security envelopes with that pattern. Oh, I have this pink paper from whatever. So whatever you have. So give yourself that limitation. Now, if you think about it and you start off with a substrate like an index card, you already have a color. So if you pick white as one of your three colors or four colors, you already have white. So you could technically bend the rules, right? So you pick three colors, but really you might have four because of the white substrate. All right. Now I've done this different ways. So tonight I thought what I'd do, like I said, have five pieces. And like I said, I use the cardstock, so I have the cardstock here. This is from cutting the 6x8s, so I have this like 5 inch by 8.5 inch paper from all those. Like I said, 2 years of doing daily collages that were 6x8. So again, I'm just going to pick several different colors. Um, but anyway, let me share an idea with you because um, just to help get you started. But we're going to do at least five collages. If you have more time, or if you finish those five and you have, when we still have time, you can go ahead and kind of do more. But a time limit is another good thing to do to push your creativity. I'm only going to make this time. So when I've done this in the past, I would actually make these and time them individually, but we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. Um,
I have a
but
quick question.
yeah,
Do you work multiples at a time or do you only work one at a time?
for my daily collages, only one at a time. However, especially whenever I do little tiny 2 inch collages.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes I have several of these going.
Okay.
So you might decide that. You might decide like, oh, it would be really cool just to work on all of them all at once. Maybe it's like, oh, I'm going to cover the background and then maybe I'll cut out circles and put them in each one. Or if you want to do one at a time, and you could do that as well. Um, Now, I always encourage my students, especially my high school students, to not worry about doing something representational. You can decide that. However, I find that when we focus on representational things, we get so caught up in, oh, how do I make this look like this thing that I'm going to do that, I want it to be, that we can get frustrated because, oh, it didn't turn out the way I wanted it. It doesn't look right. Um, and what I find with this activity is that if I can just focus on filling the space using the limited colors I have, um, I can get it onto something that maybe I wouldn't if I was so caught up in trying to make something representational. So that and but maybe that's just me because I've done so many abstract things and that's kind of how I work. I do some representational things and but anyway. And oftentimes you'll make something and it will remind you of something anyway. It'll look like something. It'll have characteristics that are reminiscent of actual objects. So, oftentimes those things just come up and it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So, um, anyway, so let me go ahead and switch this over. I have a camera that points down. So let me switch this over so you can see my space. Oh, it froze.
Uh-oh.
Okay, let's try that again.
It froze again.
Oh, you know what? I bet it's come loose from the USB. Of course, I tested it before we started, and it was fine.
Gotta love technology.
All right, it should work now. Maybe. There we go.
Yay.
All right, so I got my index cards. I do have a pencil. So I would encourage you to not use a pencil to draw your collage objects, but I am going to use a pencil to get a piece of paper that's the same size as this. And I have a bunch of scrap over here that I can use. And for some of my collages, yes, I do use X-Acto knives and things, but I'm just going to use a big pair of scissors and I've got my papers. So I'm just going to pick a color at random. I don't know what color I'm picking. All right, so I've got like a light bluish purple. So anyway, with the index cards, I try to get the students to realize like, how many times you have the kids that cut the shape out of the middle, and of course that drives us crazy. So I try to tell the kids like, put it at the edge. Okay, you've got two straight lines and a corner, so save yourself some trouble cutting. And then, of course, I'm just going to trace. So this is how I start most of my collages. And some people are like, well, why do you have a substrate if you're just going to cut this? Well, I think it's because I don't always do this. So oftentimes I will allow the white substrate to show through. But also just gluing the paper over strengthens the substrate. So it just makes it a little bit thicker. And that way, this cardstock's relatively thick. I mean, it's just cardstock. But gluing it even just onto the index card is going to make it a lot thicker. So that's the first tip. The second tip is to have scrap paper. I love, like, I get these Uline catalogs. So if you get catalogs in the mail, save them. Um, a long time ago, but when there was something called phone books, I would save those and use those for glue paper. Now they don't make phone books anymore, so because everything's online. But anyway, so I just open it up to a random page and I make sure that I have the pencil marks on this side because that's going to be the glue. And then probably the question I get asked most, what glue do I use? I use Uhu glue stick. I've been using this for almost 30 years now. And not this one glue stick, of course, but I like the brand. And so I put it on this paper because I can really spread the glue. And this is the blue, and it dries totally clear. Some brands out there say they dry clear and they're purple or blue, and they don't. Um, but anyway, some of them kind of dry brown and or gray. Uh, and then I love the kids who like put a big dot in the middle. It's like, no, spread the glue all over the back and really cover it. Um,
Yeah,
And
the
then
kids either they drown their stuff in glue or they don't put enough glue.
yeah. Yeah, I always tell them like if something isn't sticking, it's that you have too much glue or not enough. So anyway, and then when I put it on, there's so much glue on there that I can easily slide it around and cover that whole paper, that whole index card. And then I always flip it over and just make sure like, okay, I have a little bit of extra, might not be able to see that, but I have a little bit of extra hanging over. So anyway, so that's how I can cover the whole card, the whole piece of paper. And then, again, trying to like, let's see, I'm just going to pick a random color. Let's see what all right, so I got gray. So what am I going to do with this? So what I try to do is I try to fill the space. That's my number one goal. And I always feel I get a lot of compliments about my color choices and also the designs. And that's because I really do focus on good composition. And um, so let's say that I want to have something dynamic. I'm going to cut a diagonal line. Diagonal lines are more dynamic than vertical or horizontal. So if that can go in, and then I can start to play around, maybe I want to make this part diagonal too. Um, so anyway, but that's really up to you to kind of decide that. But this is how I start a lot, and I just kind of start out randomly and starting to place things down. Another reason I like collage is that you can rearrange things, play around with the composition before you commit. But the big thing is that I'm allowing the pieces to go off the edge, and if I need to, I can trim them to the approximate size. And then let's say I do want to glue this down. Again, I've got my catalog, spread my glue. All right. And then now I did get some glue on top of this piece. I don't mind. I mean, I don't think there's ever a way to perfectly glue something without getting glue all over the place. I just don't think that there's a method that exists. Um, So yes, I do end up with glue all over my fingers, but the glue stick works really great for picking things up.
Yes.
So anyway, but that's kind of how I get started. And then, I'm going to play around with this gray and try to fill up the space. And then I might start layering some stuff on top. Um, so anyway, what I'm going to challenge you, because that's one of the things is I'm always trying to challenge myself. I'm going to challenge you to work, and I'm going to give you 20 minutes and see kind of what you get into. Now, if I asked you to take five of those cards. So could you do something on each of those papers in the next 20 minutes? I don't get so caught up in finishing something. I mean, I think we get in that state like, oh, I have to complete this. And it's like, well, what if you just get something down? Or what if you do like, okay, I'm going to give myself 4 minutes on each card because I have five of them and we have 20 minutes. What could you do? If you know that you work a little bit longer, maybe say like, oh, I wonder if I can get three. Again, that idea of being finished. I mean, is artwork ever finished? I mean, like that quote, who's a Picasso, says, artwork's never finished, it just stops in interesting places. So just that idea, like, could it stop and feel resolved? But we always look at stuff and go, oh, I need to finish that, or I could do so much more to it. And the thing is, you can later. Just working quickly is a great way to generate ideas and just to get going and to step out of your comfort zone. So, um, anyway,
Would you suggest so I see you glue as you go.
most often, yes.
So
Uh,
you wouldn't like cut different pieces and then play with the composition and then glue it down when it speaks to you.
yeah, I mean, I think I kind of work both ways. Most
Mhm.
often, I like with the gray pieces, like I cut them out and then I started playing with them to kind of see where they would go. And then when I felt like, oh, okay, yeah, that's how it should go, then I glued it down. Um, so that's what I like about collage is being able to move things around and play with them and experiment. My biggest problem though is I'll do that and then I'll forget exactly where it was. So when I pick it up and put glue on it, then I go and go, and I don't know how many times I've put it down and it was like, oh, that's not where I had it. And um, so
That's when you use the magic of cell phones and take a picture and
yeah, yeah, you can't do that. But then it's like then if you're always doing that, then that becomes kind of a impediment to the actual making.
I
Uh,
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of depends on like I've suggested that like to some of my high school students. I had a girl that was working on her AP portfolio, and I'm like, she was doing collage, and I'm like, play around with it, take a picture. And the nice thing about taking a picture is that you can look at it in a small scale. It's like
Mhm.
taking a step back. Um, Another reason I like working small is that it's small, you can see the whole composition much clearer than a big paper. Um, but anyway, I suggested to this girl to like take a picture, and then that way, whenever she glued it down, she might, she'd be able to get stuff more in the space. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to give us about 20 minutes. So at about 7:50. Um, and then if folks have questions, I do have the chat open. So I always have the chat. So if you want to type your questions, or I have no problem with folks. I don't know how Stephanie has it set up, but I have no problem of people like unmuting themselves and asking questions. So
Oh yeah,
put that out
whoever
there.
has questions, just speak out or put it in the chat.
And I'll go
Um,
ahead and switch this back over so you don't have to stare at me the whole time.
do you ever notice also when you're working on a piece of art, you can get really too close to it sometimes, and I found that if I take a picture of it, then you see things that you don't see in the real one in real time. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
It makes things clearer of what needs to be adjusted or added or whatever, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and like I was saying, I think it also when you look at it on your phone, it's like it shrinks it down so you get a clearer image of it. I always try to get my students to understand like take a step back, literally
Mhm.
take a step back and look at it from a distance because you get a clearer picture of it. You can see it better. Actually, one of the things I found since I do so many Zoom workshops anymore. And for the longest time, I was also doing videos and things, is that looking at myself actually working on the screen is really interesting because, especially with this camera pointing down,
Mhm.
I'm seeing it straight on through the camera. Whereas looking at it in real life, it's distorted because it's tilted away from me. So
Right.
if you have a setup where maybe you've done online stuff and you have a camera, like that could be an interesting way to work because you can see yourself working from a different perspective.
Hmm.
So I do get people ask like, oh well, it's kind of cool that these things are sticking off the edge. People can feel like uh people can do whatever they want. I tend to like I just am lazy. I'm not going to trim them until I get more stuff on there. So I will trim off all these edges, but that's something I get asked a lot. It's like, oh, it looks kind of cool if stuff goes off the edge. If you want to have stuff go off the edge, by all means, have stuff go off the edge.
There are no rules.
Yeah. I think another reason I really got into collage is that it's really building an image. Whereas, oftentimes when you're drawing, it's like, you're starting off with the lines, and with this way, it's like I can cut stuff. I can check to see if it works. I can pick it up. I can move it. I can cut it. I can, change it before I actually stick it down. And there's something I love working with my hands, and I love doing 3D stuff, and I actually have a wood shop, and I, used to do a lot of woodworking, but so I kind of think that sort of, again, when I was talking about how it made me think differently, I think that's part of it too.
The slightest move changes the whole thing.
So one thing I like to do, I really like stacking and layering. And so I have these light gray shapes, and then I went ahead and dug out some dark gray. And so now I'm cutting the shapes that kind of fit in and layering these darker gray shapes into the lighter gray. Something I like to do a lot.
Like it. What do you do with all of your collages once they're done?
Uh, right now, the majority of my daily collages are in a big bin. Um, I've sold some.
Is
Uh,
there a plan for a big end thing or just
Not really. I mean, I really do it just for myself, like just to um keep making and doing, and if people like them and want to buy them. So I when I go to the conferences and when I do workshops, I'll pack up some of them and take them, and I've sold a number of them um, at the national convention this year in Louisville. I took a bunch, but it's funny because a lot of times, like I'll really like stuff whenever I make it, and then I go back and look at it, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
it's okay. Like, yeah, it's like maybe I don't want to try to sell that one, but then other people are like, oh, that one's great. I want to buy it. You're like, okay. So,
I loved the cat ones that you did
oh, okay,
for the
yeah,
fundraiser.
yeah,
And then wasn't it last week or the week before you did a face?
yeah. I was doing faces. I did a series of like six faces. Actually, I have them right here.
Those are really cute.
Yeah, they were based off of that Japanese artist. Um, so I did a whole bunch of
Oh, I love that.
different faces. Like this one was very much after this Japanese artist she's a printmaker and like doing block printing, and I was like, oh, that would make a nice collage. And so I
Hmm.
played with that, and then I was like, unfortunately, I'm like that was too much like her style, so then I started playing around, and I realized I'm like, well, what if I just start making like funky faces like I used to sketch and doodle all the time.
Right. Oh,
So
these are great.
all these were like the faces.
And these also you did not draw first, you just cut.
So with these, oftentimes, yeah, I just cut, but sometimes to get like the right size, like of the eyelids, I would take the cutout, like
Uh-huh.
the cutout part, the negative space of the eye, and use that to figure out the eyelids.
Right.
So yeah, oftentimes with these, it is like, okay, things have to be a certain size and have to fit in a certain space.
Oh, I
Um,
love these.
so,
Those are great.
and then I did a whole series of sort of spring inspired, plant inspired ones.
Hmm.
So sometimes I do themes and explore that for a while, and sometimes things are just more random. So these are some of the more plant like spring ones that I was doing.
But you're still doing those now, right?
I've kind of the last few days I haven't had a lot of time, so I've just been doing some small ones
Hmm.
that are just more abstract. Like this was one I did the other day,
I like that.
just kind of kept it simple. Yeah, I did have a big show, big exhibit whenever I hit the year mark. The art center that I manage has a little exhibition space, and so I
But you did
took,
the whole hallway.
yeah, I did the whole hallway.
How long did it take you to put those up?
It took me like 4 days.
Oh my
I
God.
did it in different sections.
And
So
what did you use to hang them?
just push pins. I just did the push pins. I pushed them not through the collage, but right next to it into the wall.
Uh-huh.
And that way I had four push pins.
Got it. That was something.
And
It's literally like a whole hallway of the collages.
Eric, can I ask you a question?
yeah,
What kind of glue stick do you use? What brand is that?
Ooh,
Ooh, Magic Blue.
yeah.
There's something better that you like about this particular glue stick than other glue sticks?
Um, it's, I mean, really, it was like the first glue stick I ever used because I just knew it was a good glue stick. So it has all natural ingredients. It's acid free. So it's archival. It the blue, I like the blue because then you can see where you put the glue and it does dry totally clear.
Hmm.
Um, and I've had, I know some people hate glue stick and they're like, oh, it never sticks. Well, I have visual journals that are 25 years old that stuff still sticks in them. I use this type of glue stick, and it sticks. Um,
That's really interesting because when I had a collage projects in college, we used the rubber cement, which has a horrible odor to it. And as soon as
yeah,
you open the can, you lose track of what you were going to do with your cardstock.
yeah.
Get automatically get a high from it. It was terrible.
This brand sticks really, really well.
Yeah.
It does.
Yes.
Also, Eric, where do you source your cardstock from? Where is a good place to purchase cardstock, like the kind that you're using?
So the kind I use is from Michaels. It's their Recollections cardstock. So that's where I get it for my personal self. Um, and I like it because there's such a diverse range of colors. Unfortunately, they don't have all the colors I would like. For some reason, their blues like this. So this is like their darkest blue, and then it goes to like, I don't know if I have an example here, but it's kind of like, and then it goes to this one. Like like I want one in between, but for some reason they don't make one in between.
What size sheets do they come in? What size sheets do you purchase when you get them?
So they are 8.5 by 11.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so they're just over in their scrapbooking section. They do have some, 12 by 12 for scrapbooking, but I just usually get the 8.5 by 11. So I would love to do bigger collages, and people have often suggested I do bigger ones, and I'm like, well, right now with the paper I'm using, I can only do 8.5 by 11. But there are some other um I've tried, I haven't used it too much, but is Canson has a paper called Color Line that actually comes in a thicker than the cardstock. But it's like most places, it's a very limited color palette. So
Uh-huh. What about coloring paper?
I've never used that.
Okay, the other question I have is, so you're backing these collages on like index cards? Can you use like an index card to create the collage underneath the cardstock? Would that be too
Yeah,
flimsy?
no, I mean that's what I have here.
So
So
those are just regular index
So these,
cards?
so for I use the index cards, not for all my stuff. Actually, for I do index cards a lot for exercises and for like teaching classes, and because it's not precious. That's what I like about index cards. It's cheap, inexpensive, and people don't get attached to it because it's just an index card.
Where do you find online index cards?
I just go to Staples and get them.
They have them at Staples.
Yeah, index cards, Staples. You can order them on Amazon. But for my daily collages, I use this Strathmore mixed media paper. It's
Oh,
a
well, that's good stuff.
Yeah, it's their 400 series, so it's a nice heavy cart board. Um, and it does buckle a little bit, but that's what I use. But for teaching purposes, I love index cards.
Okay,
Mentioned
thank you.
Colorade. The thing about Colorade is that it's only one-sided also.
Yeah, that's true.
And it can it marks up very easily. Like it'll catch your finger grease or oil. or
True.
stretch very easily where the cardstock doesn't do that.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. It's true. I seem to remember going way back that the rubber cement also pills a lot on top of the colored paper. It was a big mess.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Color Aid because I had, up until about 2 years ago, I had a box of Color Aid left over from when I was in college. And I finally, after one of my millions of moves, decided to throw it out because I just didn't like working with it. And I don't know why I held on to it for so long.
That stuff is really expensive now, I bet.
Yeah, yeah. Jenna has her hand raised. Hi, Jenna.
Yeah. So far this is really cool. I recommend like texture pattern paper. This is really neat. Very fun. I have pumpkins and moons and some stripes. This is really stinking cool. Check that out.
I love collage with the handmade printed papers, the Indian silk screen papers,
Right. I'm about to go in with some dots.
some bats.
Dots.
So cool.
So, Eric, do you find that the paper that you use as cardstock is really more suited, like stiffer than the regular kind of like paper we're referring to, and it gives you more control when you're actually doing geometric designs like cutting and stuff?
Yeah, the cardstock is easy to cut. It's not super thick, but it's thicker than like construction paper.
Uh-huh.
But it's yeah. I mean, I've been using it now for a couple years. It's the primary paper that I use.
So when you introduce this kind of lesson to the students, I see that you're wearing a Star Wars t-shirt, and something about the design that you're doing resembles like science fiction with the points and stuff.
Yeah.
So when you introduce the subject, you just give them a theme and then you give them a suggestion of what you're trying to accomplish, what kind of a design that they should kind of generalize when they're cutting, and then you just let them do what they're doing for 20 minutes.
I do it differently, but I typically do not give them a theme because I want to know their ideas. And I
Oh,
find that sometimes we can be too directive. I'm very much choice-based and I don't assign projects. I do exercises. So oftentimes when I do this, I will actually I'll just say pick 3 different colors. You have an index card. Okay, make a collage. You have 5 minutes. And then they have 5 minutes to do the collage. And then I'm like, all right, get another index card. All right, you have 5 more minutes, make another collage. And it's that limitation of just 5 minutes that some of them try to be representational and try to make something specific. But because it's such a short amount of time, you have to switch off that conscious thought process in your mind and you have to be intuitive. And so what I find is that then they do stuff that is like really interesting. And then you do that again, and then I ask them, I'm like, okay, let's do 7 minutes, and then we do 10 minutes, and so oftentimes we'll do like a series of 4 or 5 different collages, starting off with 5 minutes, usually 5, 5, 7, and 10. Sometimes I go up to 15. I used to do 20 for an index card, and everyone complains like that's just too long. Because at first they complain that the 5 minutes is too short. And then they get to 20 minutes and they're like, that's too long because they've been conditioned like to be like, oh, I now I can um, you know, working in that 5 minute limitation really helps them tap into that intuition. So
right, right. And
um
it's a longer project too. There's not a lot of breathing space between each index card. If you're going for an hour, 20 times 3 is 60 minutes. That's a long
yeah,
time to be working on a one kind of project.
yeah.
One other quick question that I had was, I missed the first 20 minutes of this presentation. How did you actually measure out the background cardstock to the index card. What's the fastest way to do that? Ah,
Just put it in the corner, take a pencil, trace it.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you for
I
that.
used to cut it like specifically with an X-Acto knife on a
Cutting
self-healing mat and try to be precise. But
Yeah.
I, the problem is like even when you buy paper like this, it's not 6 by 8 because they do trim it and sometimes there's slight variations and sometimes it's not square. So like we think like, oh, it's manufactured, it should be exactly 6 by 8, it should be square. But I don't know how many times, like especially with the cardstock, um, it's not square and it's not 8.5 by 11. So there's always variations, and I just find that's the quickest, easiest way
How many
to cut
cards
it.
do you get out of that Strathmore paper when you do it? Two?
Depends on the size.
Well, the size
So
you're showing now, what do you
so
get? Two,
so well,
three?
so here like this is 4 by 6. So I
Okay,
get two of those out of one of these.
okay.
Okay, but I also do 2 by 2s
Ah,
and 3 by 3s and 3 by 4s. And so oftentimes I will actually take a bigger, like a 11 by 14 inch paper and cut it down and get lots of different sizes out.
oh,
So, um, yeah. Anyway.
thank you.
Hmm. All right. So we've actually gone over the time we've had about 30 minutes now. So I'm really kind of curious to hear from other folks about kind of what they've been experiencing, if anybody wants to share. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove the spotlight from me. And so hopefully what that will do is allow other people to, when they jump in, like I would love for folks to share something. You can actually share, hold up your collage if you want. If you don't want to show what you've done and you just want to, you have a question or you have some thoughts about what you've been doing, I'd love to hear from other folks as well. So anyway, just gonna kind
One.
of open it up.
And I'm in the middle of a second one. Here's mine.
Yes.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I didn't have much construction paper, but I mean, this is my third one. It's got birds.
Mushroom!
Yeah.
It looks a little like a flying saucer too.
Oh my God,
Yay.
you're
They're
awesome.
friends.
Meryl
They're
Ann is in
visiting their house.
space. Meryl Ann, you
They're
look like you're in
beautiful.
space with your planets and swishes and
I like, yeah, I like circles. And my other one,
Oh, those are beautiful.
the other one I can't pick up because
Oh, wow.
it's not glued yet. But obviously I have a lot of circle hole punches.
Got circle earrings too. Look at you.
I like circles. Circles are about the divine feminine.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm feeling like I would like to manifest more of that in the world at the
oh
moment.
my God, yes. Very nice, Mom.
Oh, look at that. That's so cool. Did you
Very
punch all those
nice.
holes too? Oh, I love that.
I did not punch them.
You had a paper.
I
with
ripped
the
a
holes?
page out of a
scrap.
spiral bound book, and that's what was on the edge.
I love
Girl, you're
it.
cheating.
I love it.
That's
That's so
awesome.
cool.
That's beautiful.
Kristen, let's see yours. Oh, it looks like a face.
Wow.
Cool.
I
Yeah.
love them.
Those are very cool.
Oh, those are awesome.
This is great. Anybody else want to share?
Hi, Kristen.
Deb, let's see.
So
Oh, Kelly, those are great. Oh, Deb, you're a terror. You're a terror. I love that.
yeah, I just got done watching this documentary on Gerhard Richter, and he like swipes everything. So
Uh-huh.
I had all these pieces that were like prepared papers from jelly printing and like
Oh, yeah.
watercolor, and so I just made it into like swipes because I just kept feeling him in the
I love
you
it.
know. So
I
and then
love the color splotches within like that's affecting that grayscale there. It's
yeah,
really effective.
and there's the
Very
little one that's
cool.
starting on the bottom with all kinds of crazy other
Hello, little man.
things.
I love torn edges.
Yeah, me
I
too.
love them. Kelly, let's see yours. Hold them up again. Oh, you're muted. Okay, we're waiting.
Whip it out, Kelly.
Sorry, I was mid glue. This is the one I'm in the middle of.
Oh, I like that background.
And then there's these two.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
I also used some papers.
Printed papers?
Yeah, some papers that I printed with my jelly plate or just like washed brushes off with.
Wow.
Stuff like that. Like, you know.
So many
Sorry,
options. Ah, Eric, this is awesome.
All right, so I want to we're talking about circles, so I want to share a little tip for doing concentric circles. First of all, people always ask me, do I cut my circles or do I use punches? I cut my circles by hand. I use so many different sizes that I don't believe they make enough circle punches, and I don't like it to be perfect. I like the wonkiness, and one of my mantras is embrace the wonky. The
I
wonky,
love
like,
I love that word wonky. It's the
yeah,
best
so
word.
so embrace the wonky, and that's what I love about these, because it is cutting with scissors. I'm not trying to make a perfect cut. I know now with things like the Cricut and the Silhouette machines that you can, like, yeah, you can get something that cuts very perfectly, but then it's kind of like, well, where's the artist's hand? I like the fact that you can see my hand, in the way my line is. So, but I started using a lot of concentric circles in my collages. Let me pull up. So, like, even something as simple as this with the problem though is that when you start adding a whole lot, like in this one, there's 3 different greens.
Oh,
Um,
girl, that looks so good. Sorry.
That's right. So anyway, it's like trying to think about, like, how do I do that? I used to do it in a very time-consuming way where I usually would start with the big circle and work to the small, and then one day it dawned on me, like, no, start with a small circle, then glue that to another piece of paper, cut out the circle around it, and then make it bigger. So I know some of you were like, oh, I just described it, so you can kind of visualize that, but I do want to go ahead and just kind of show you how I do that. So like, say that I want to, oh, almost knocked off my paper. So let's say that I want to do,
Can I
like,
spotlight you again just so we could
yeah,
see
yeah.
what you
What?
really
Are you
small.
good, honey?
There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, I just, I'll cut out, usually I cut off a little piece, a square. So that would be my approximate size of my first circle. And so I just cut. And then, as I always tell my students, turn your paper, not your scissors. And I usually go around once, and then, there are people who are like, well, how do you get your circles so perfect? I'm like, well, first of all, they're not perfect. But I do go around and I do try to trim off some of the really wonky bits, but I do like the wonky bits. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And then when I get this, then I can glue it down to something like that. So I'll take this, spread a little glue on it. Like I said, this took me probably months to figure out. Now it seems so obvious. But stick that usually near a corner somewhere. And then I'll cut that out, usually in a square. And then I cut my circle around it. The only problem with doing this is that sometimes then the circle gets way bigger than I really need it to be. So if there is a very specific size you need, then this might not be the best approach. But then, like, oh, I want to glue it onto this paper and have another small one. So, or another circle. And I take that whole thing. This is how I do the eyes when I do monsters.
I love those monsters also.
I love the monsters too.
Those were so cute.
And then I can just cut this off. This time I'm going to do like just a little line, just a smaller one around it. And that's how I do concentric circles. And then, you know, of course it can be,
Can you start with a template though, like just a template or a stencil of a circle or a
I mean,
jar
you could do it however you want to.
or like something like this and just trace around it and just cut it
Yeah.
out from that. I mean, it looks pretty tricky the way you're doing it. It looks like it takes talent, which I don't know everyone. Like I confess, I don't think I have the talent to cut a circle out the way you're doing.
It's well, I mean, it's like everything, it's practice, but the thing is, there's no right way or wrong way to do this, you know, so it's like, um, you know, if people want to use circle punches, they're more than welcome to do that. If people want to use templates and trace, they're more than welcome. It's what works for you. So there's no that's why I like teaching choice based is that like I have kids that'll come up to me, they're like, Mr. Scott, how do I do this? And I'm like, I don't know how you would do it. I know how I would do it. And I would explain that to them. And oftentimes, especially with younger kids, they'll go back and figure out their own way, but they want to see how I would solve the problem. You know, so if you're like, oh, how do you cut circles out? Well, this is how I cut out circles. But you as an artist, you as a maker might have a different way. Um, you know, so I find now that as I'm getting older, my hands aren't as steady. So actually, as I cut, things are a little bit wonkier than maybe they were a few years ago. And that's just part of the aging process. So there's no, that's what I like about art, that there really is no right way or one single way of doing something. And there are always multiple ways of solving a problem. And it's actually that I've heard people say that's what style is. Style is how you solve problems. And so whenever you talk about like an artist having a style, well, that's because they have a certain way of solving particular problems.
So when you say choice-based learning, could you go a little bit further into that definition, please?
Yeah, so choice based is that idea that that students are artists and that they have authentic ideas. And so assigning them a project where they have a specific outcome actually robs them of their creativity and their agency. And so it's not authentic for a student to make a picture of the Great Wave, Hokusai's Great Wave. Um, Sometimes they can choose that, but if you, as the artist, as the art teacher, are telling them, okay, today we're making Hokusai's Great Wave, well, why? Oh, because we're mimicking his style. So choice based often is you could do projects. And when I first started doing choice based, I would assign a project, but I would talk about, you know, show examples of different artists and we would work with big ideas. So with Hokusai, it could be, well, Hokusai's Great Wave is part of a series of,
Mhm.
you know, the 20, what is it, 26 views of Mount Fuji. So he was an artist in his environment using this big landmark on his island in Japan as inspiration. So you could talk about how artists use their landscape, their environments as inspiration for their art making. And you could have students actually think about that and create art that uses something in their own environment. But if you as a teacher are making the decisions, then you're because I think back, I used to teach, you know, a lot of us are discipline based art ed, right? You know, DBAE, and we, you know, I came into teaching back in the mid 90s, right? Like that's when I was in college and discipline-based art ed was really catching on at that time. And so by the time I got into teaching, that became a standard way. Like, okay, we're gonna make you know, Henri Rousseau jungle pictures. And I did that with my second graders. And then I would have kids come up to me, it's like, do I have to make a jungle? And I would look at them and kind of take a moment and I'd be like, well, yeah, we do. Yes, you have to make a jungle. And then the kid would turn, you know, look up at me and say, well, why? And I had no good reason why they had to make a jungle picture other than because that's what I told you to. And I always wanted to say that because that's what my parents told me. How many of us had parents who are like, well, why? Because I told you, right?
So what
Like,
do you say instead?
so anyway, so what I ended up doing was like, well, I told him like, well, the project is to make a jungle picture. But then I realized like, oh, I'm one of the things I'm looking for is creativity. And I just had a kid literally ask for permission to take a creative risk. And I said no. That's what really got me thinking about like how I taught was that I had kids asking to do something that was a creative risk. And I was telling them no, they couldn't because it didn't align with my view of what the project was. And so when I look at displays and I see a bunch of Van Gogh sunflowers or a bunch of Chuck Close portraits that students have made, I kind of cringe a little bit. And hopefully I'm not offending anybody that may do that kind of stuff. But um, for me, it's like I want to know what my students like to make. I want to encourage them.
So instead of like saying, okay, Mr. Scott, I don't want to do a jungle picture. I want the picture to be the jungle of my life. The home where I live is my jungle. So I want to create a painting that represents the jungle that I've created that surrounds me at home or something like that. Is that choice-based learning?
It to some degree, but if I'm saying that we're making a jungle, then I'm still taking a lot of choice away from them. But if I want to talk about how Rousseau got inspiration to do his jungle pictures because he went to places like the zoo and he never traveled to the jungle. That's why his paintings are very, and he wasn't a trained painter. He was a very naive painter. His paintings are not very realistic. Because he saw these plants at the botanical garden. He went to see the lions and the tigers and the different jungle animals at the zoo, and these animals taken out of their natural habitat. But he was inspired to create these basically imaginary jungles, and so you know it might be looking at him and saying like, how do artists create things that they're inspired by?
Or
And
pick up cues of things around them to create what they
yeah.
are going to create. So, what are cues? What are the cues in your life that you could use to create a painting? Would that be something that would be a good prompt for choice-based learning?
I mean, choice based is it's really about it's a pedagogy. So it really starts with what do you believe as an artist, as an art teacher. So for me, I believe everyone is uniquely creative, and I want to. So that means that I value originality, I over conformity. I value my students' ideas over my ideas. I want to know what they like to make. I want to know what they're into. And so giving them authentic choice where they are deciding what they're making, how they're making it, and oftentimes like what materials they're using. So it's much deeper than just saying, oh, this is choice based. Here's a quick, easy way of doing that. So I can't give, um, yeah, I'm trying to think. Like I
It's
can't,
experimentation and risk taking also.
yeah.
Like, let them make mistakes, try stuff out, see what works, what doesn't work. Try a material you've never tried before and see if you like it. That's pretty much, I mean, you kind of you teach certain materials and techniques and then let the kids decide what it is they want to do with it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So I teach elementary and I've been doing that, putting more materials out where it used to be everyone needs to use this. I do sometimes still put out topics, but with my older fourth and third, fourth and fifth, I do not always. I'll teach it and I'll say, okay, what can you do with this? And have them go in that direction. And I used to keep just pencils on the table. Now I keep a variety of materials where they can grab them and switch if they want to. And I've watched my art club go from everybody's kind of doing the same thing. We sort of do this, but we make trading cards and they can make trading cards whenever they would like. But one day, somebody was building a sculpture of some kind of fence that wasn't keeping anything in, which was fine. It was awesome. It was fantastic looking. He just called it the fence. And then there was a girl making purses with burlap and stuff. And the most amazing things happen when you just kind of let go and give them skills to, as Eric's saying, let their creativity show you where they're going to be. And some really fantastic stuff has been happening in my art room. I've been learning more and more about them and their creativity. And I saw Eric in a Zoom like this. I think it was 2021. It was the first meeting our art teacher, PLG, had during COVID. We had like an art teacher day and we had you on our screen. And I actually have along with my papers, a couple of the things I made that day. We did some watercolors and cutting and collaging. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Eric, did you give a presentation at NISATA at the annual conference in 2021, or it was virtual, I think?
Yeah, I was actually one of the keynote speakers that year.
Yes, that's how I remember you from showing your monsters then.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, like this activity, this is something that I would not give as a project, but I do it as a challenge. And so I'm sharing, because I think what happens is that with choice-based, a lot of times people think like, oh, it's just a free-for-all, like you're not teaching them anything. The kids just come in and they can just do whatever they want. It's like, well, no. First of all, as a teacher, I can put out certain materials. So maybe at the beginning of the year, it's just drawing, and then maybe we move into painting and collage. And so a lot of choice-based, a lot of tab teaching for artistic behavior. Teachers will have centers, studio centers, like, okay, here's the drawing center, here's what's available in the drawing center. And so showing and demonstrating materials and techniques is part of it, but also talking about how do artists come up with ideas. And I think that's something that with a project, when you tell a student like we're making Van Gogh sunflowers or Chuck Close portraits, you are deciding that as the teacher. That's teacher directed, whereas student directed might be, okay, we're going to talk about identity. I want you to create a piece of artwork that shows me something about your identity. And you can have these conversations about what identity is, how we can represent it. We can look at different artists, everything from Rembrandt's self-portraits to even just an abstract piece that some artist made, because there's that again, there's a very long quote. It's actually by a writer, but it boils down to that every piece of art is a self-portrait. So you can tell a lot about the person who makes a piece from the piece itself, whether it's writing or a piece of artwork. So trying to get students to think critically and to think creatively and not just follow the directions of a project.
Eric, do you find that choice-based learning is most successful in a secondary school
Nope.
environment?
I
Where
find it's most effective for everybody.
everybody.
And actually, the thing is that it's harder in older kids, especially if they've gone through, well, a lot of them have gone through education in general, where they're told what to do and how to do it in every single class. If I just do what the teacher tells me to, I will get an A.
Right, convergent versus divergent thinking. Have you written a book yet? It would be helpful.
Well, I have a couple books on visual journaling. I actually, this is my latest book that I wrote. So if you are a type that you're like, I want to be making art more consistently, this book is 10 pieces of practical advice. But I self-published this. It's available on Amazon, but it's basically like I've got 10 pieces of advice, and the first one is show up. The second one is sit down. The third one is shut up. Um, and people want to say,
I still have on my refrigerator the little card that you gave out in the gift
"Oh,
bag.
the permission and
Yes,
initiative."
say
Yeah.
it again. Could you say it again, please? It's so good. I have it.
What?
I look at it every day.
So it's permission and initiative that
Yes.
oftentimes we as artists are looking for somebody to give us permission to make art or give us the initiative to make our own art. And so that it was always a running joke with my friend Dave and I when we would do workshops. So we made those cards. So we gave them out at the beginning of the workshops. We're like, all right, we just gave you permission. We just gave you the initiative. Um,
I love that.
and you can download those off of my website.
Oh, you have a website too? What is your website,
Yeah.
please?
EricScottArt.com. And actually, if you want to follow me on social media,
At EM Scott
yeah,
Art.
yeah.
Oh,
So
what is that?
uh,
Is that Instagram?
Instagram, Substack, Facebook.
Okay.
I was on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore, or X, whatever you want to call it. But it's also I don't post there, but Threads, which is the Facebook Meta one. So anyway.
What is Substack?
Substack, it originally started as a newsletter thing. So you can actually go on there and have a free newsletter and you could write it up. And so I started using it because I was using MailChimp and I'm like, let me do Substack because you can also do paid subscribers.
Uh-huh.
And but it's free to use. And it's kind of like social media now. They have something called Notes, which is very much like Instagram. But what I find is that you can actually hide all the stuff you don't want to see. There's no advertising at all on it, so you don't see all this weird stuff. And so I have it pretty much where I just see creative people and see people making art because Substack, there's a lot of writers. I mean, it started out a lot of writers were using it because it was a way to like, here's my writing, and but a lot of creatives use it as a newsletter. And so there you can actually use that and it gets emailed out. So if anybody's on my newsletter list, that gets mailed out through Substack. Um, but but yeah, so there's a lot of writers on there, and of course there's a lot of political writers. And then when Twitter and Facebook all kind of at the beginning of the year, a lot of people got off of those platforms and came to Substack. And so it is a little bit more like social media, especially it's called Notes. But I do encourage people to go there because there's some really cool stuff happening there that's not anywhere else on social
Substack.
media. Substack, yeah.
That's Substack, Substack.
CK, Substack. Yeah,
ACK.com.
I think so. Just Google Substack, it'll come
Okay.
up. But
Thank you.
yeah. But anyway, so Stephanie, I think my time's up. So if you
Let me. I don't know what happened to my partner. Hang on, she's usually with us too. Okay, so she's not here. So I'm gonna, you know what? If you need PD hours or a certificate or anything, I'm gonna put my email in the chat. MNDNSP. Please email me that you need it, and I will forward it to my partner. And so hopefully she'll get you out all the documentation by this weekend. Okay.
MNDN Spirit, MNDN Spirit at AOL.
Correct. So if you need either, if you're in New York, CTLE hours or a certificate that states you were with us for an hour and a half, just put what you need in the email and I will forward everything to Mary Beth for you guys. Can't believe it's 8:30. Oh my God. Do
Because we got in
wanna-
that big
do we want
conversation
to
about choice-based.
do one last share?
Sure.
Maybe two.
Oh,
Err. That's all I was able. Oh, Mom got another one. You're just rocking it tonight, Mom. Brenda, those are beautiful. Oh, love it. Kelly, hold that up again. I missed it. Kristen's got the green, yellow, blue. Oh, Mary and Meryl Ann's got all her circles again. Oh, I love Kelly's and the handmade papers. You guys are awesome.
My girlfriend came by and she just came in the middle because she was dropping something off, and she's a collage artist and she couldn't stand it, so oh, all my supplies are on the table, so we're sharing.
It's a party. It's a collage party. I love it. Well, Eric, I thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with all of us. You are awesome, and I am going to continue to follow. Maybe I can stalk you and ask you to do this again sometime. This was really great. And thank you everyone for spending time with us tonight. We are going to have one more session for this school year. I'm going to be sending out flyers this weekend. It's basically going to be, I think I'm going to call it, oh my God, I just blanked out on what I was going to call it. Show and tell, but I'm going to call it sip and show and tell.
Cool.
It'll be our final time until the fall. So bring your best ideas, your biggest flops, your biggest successes, and something to drink while we share.
Thank you so much, Erin. It was great.
Eric, you're welcome to join us as a member of the community
Erin.
anytime.
Erin, yeah.
Again, thank you so much for doing this with us, and this will be posted on our YouTube channel by the end of the weekend.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all
This
so
was
much.
fantastic
Awesome
and a
sauce.
lot of
Thanks
fun.
for coming.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
night,
you.
guys.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Have a good night.
Stay cool.
Night, Steph.
Very fun.
So you might want to be on his email